what a beautiful day. Beautiful blue skies. The air is clean and clear. I don't see any chemtrails. The sun is shining. I see my bird friends. They follow me around now. It's very funny. They're getting used to me a lot because of the hand feeding. So they know when I come out for my walk, they should expect a nice cornucopia of treats over near the porch. So this is for Lumine and Liam, always. You guys, I love you. And I imagine you are with me right now. That's how this works. I imagine you being with me, by my side, celebrating with me, for there is movement in the direction of the good. I love this 4. It's really clear today. I mean, you have to be creative. If that were the bottom part, it used to be more clear. But that's the Emperor's sign, 4. I suppose we should talk about what that means, the Emperor and the Tarot and all that. Considering the project that I just finished last night, I also feel very proud and accomplished in that way of creation. Okay, so a bunch of things to cover, and we'll get to them all, I imagine. But a very good sign of things moving in the right direction. My first viral video. I mean, really viral video. Now upwards to 340,000 views. 2,000 likes. A few hundred comments. Yeah, it's my first viral video. Geez, I've been at making videos now for, I don't know, 14 years, 13 years. A good Ophiuchus cycle, I'd say. Oh, it's so warm today. I mean, not in comparison to what most people would think. Folks in Siberia with permafrost would say, yes, this is a summer day. That's how it feels today. After all those winds of change were blowing through these trees in this forest for the last 3 or 4 days. It just happens to coincide with brilliant happenings in my life. I mean, for most it might not be much. However, for me it's very notable, the change. And it's not about the drama at home. That's just what it is. It's me not really caring so much for this. What follows is just even so much better. Such better news. Yeah, it really is. So let's have a little bit of sunlight, shall we? A little zoom in here. And you can have a closer look at the sun. As can I. So, as the catbirds make their noise, yesterday I discovered that there was this viral video on TikTok, and it had been going viral for a few days. During these times, things were tumultuous at home, and I was praying incessantly, just about through creation of music and prayer and meditation, being solitary, imagining being with my family in a way where they're joyous, imagining being with my children in the same way, and them feeling free and abundant and cared for and loved and nourished, nurtured, and being with my wife. And I say this for here in this local reality, as we would see at this game, all of these things you would say do not exist if you were to look at me. And I understand that. just understand the imagination is more important to me than this reality. And of course that could be considered delusional until you understand that the imagination is Christ and is the creator of all things. There can't be a single thing created in this world without it first being a thought in the mind of God. And humanity is no exception to this. We have a direct interface with God through our thoughts. And so when we use the imagination, we step into a very special, higher dimensional plane where we don't have restrictions of time and space. We can be anywhere. We can do anything. There are no restrictions as to what we can create or design or be or see or hear or imagine, for lack of a better word, perceive. And so our consciousness receives a major upgrade when we use the imagination, and thus I find it quite ironic, but at the same time very predictable, that it's described as a childish thing in this three-dimensional world. I'm sure that would be the case to a line. You think of a point that says I can become a line. What would other points think of that? If there was a single point that had a personality, just work with me. If there was a point that has a personality, and that personality says to another personality who is unconscious, I believe we can come together and not be separate as two different points, but rather intertwined or connected in some way, linked in some way, I believe. And what it would require is an infinite number of points to exist between us in what I see as this linear fashion, connecting us. So you are over there and I am over here, and between us are infinite amounts of points that connect us, because they're infinite. They can connect us, and there's no separation between them. Thus we are connected, says the point to the other point that wants to become a line. And thus all the points in infinity start to adhere to the wishes of the point that used the imagination, because the imagination knows no bounds. And there is the formation of a line. Well, I'm sure that line was inspired by its father. Next thing you know, oops, that's a big zoom. I'm sure that point was inspired by his father. I'm sure whoever wants to really hear this story is still here, and anyone else probably got fed up thinking, oh boy, is this going to be, for the rest of the video, an extreme zoom in on William's face? As much as that might be pleasant to him, not to us. There you go. So as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the zoom, which I caused myself, a point says to the other point, I wish to make a line between us. What this requires is an infinite number of points to exist between us so that it can form what we would believe to be a solid line, when in fact it's just infinite expressions of points between us in a linear fashion. You follow? Cool. We made it. So that line decides I'm going to procreate. I'd like to have more lines like myself, so that I know the point on the other side isn't going to be skeptical and try to sabotage what I have in mind still. Because if I can create a line as I have demonstrated, then I know I can become something even greater, says the line and its kin. You see where this is going? I pray so, because it has to do with the number 4 that we saw. I don't just say things to say them. At least not now. Sometimes I do, I suppose. I might say things for entertainment purposes, but in this case it's educational. So we have, as I said, an evolved point that became a line, had children, other lines. And one day, the line thinks, let's think outside the box. What if we were to join the points of each other, if I were to blend with you as a point in the line, and you were to blend with your sibling as a point in the line, and your sibling were to join with your mother at the point in the line, and your mother were to join with me, so that we're all joined together, and we're the equal amount of distance between each other, just as we've always been. So we create dimensions for the first time. And these dimensions form into a square. 4 lines joined at the points. Next thing you know, the other points are listening. Now they're saying, okay, we thought that the line was a fluke, but what we see here is not a fluke. We see boundaries, we see space, we see regions, we see angles, we see height, and we see width. All these strange things, all contained within this magical square that was created by this family that believed that they could become something more than a point itself into a line, which they did, and then they became this wild thing called a square. And upon this square, great things are made. For the first time, there are boundaries for there to be creation. There's a field in which things can be expressed. Whereas with the line, it's just linear. That's why it's a line, because it's linear. But with a square, like I said, angles, regions, height, and width, incredible things possible now. So everyone naturally wants to get involved, all the points. So the points start to play within the square. And one says, hey, there is a point in this square that you made, which is magical. And I see something else, but it's only when I close my eyes. I see more squares. In fact, I see more than 4, like the lines that you needed to put this all together. I see 6 squares. But they're angled in a strange way. It's hard for me to describe, just with mere words and feelings. And so, I'd like to create a square of my own and join with yours and try to convince others to join with us so we can have 6. So the first family, very inventive, of course, is on board. And they're able to convince a few others that if they were to become a square, of course, very easy because they can now see all the magic involved. And you can do everything from making waveforms to various oscillations to curves and graphs. Heck, you can even imprint a hologram right there on a flat, 2-dimensional square surface. All these beautiful things. And someone says, what do you mean a hologram? And the point, which has become its own square with its own family, to do this experiment says, well, when I saw that point, it wasn't right in the center of the square. It was just a little bit off. On the bottom left, slightly, but a little off from the center. And it was there that I closed my eyes and I saw the most miraculous thing. It's as if I could reach out from this square plane into something that was deeper, more profound. So hard to explain, but there. So what do you call it? This thing. It's not a thing so much as it's a way of seeing. Well, what do you see? I see something deep. You mean there's depth. Yes, there's depth. And so the 6 squares came together and they started joining their points at all the lines until there was this construct that looked so strange, and there was the final square looking at it saying, listen, if I join with you right now, whatever points that are inside this, they won't be able to leave. Whereas they could freely move around in the square, we also know they couldn't leave that either once they committed. But this, at least with the square, we knew there was light. There's no guarantee that there will be light inside whatever this is that we're creating. And the 6th square has to make this decision. Finally it does, and it joins with all the points on the top, and the lid is closed to that which becomes a 3-dimensional cube. And within, suddenly, the holographic projections from all of these 2-dimensional squares come together to form the perception of depth. The deepness that was once seen only in the imagination. And you see how all of these elements, as we move through the dimensions scientifically, require imagination in order to reach a higher state of being. There has to be someone who is willing to look outside of the box. Because the box that we have here is closed until you decide through the imagination to see the light within so that it permeates the box and shows you what is outside. Just as the point needed to imagine infinite points to become a line in unity with another point, just as the lines needed to imagine 4 others to become a square with infinite points between them, just as the cube needed to imagine 6 squares. So we start to see 2, 4, 6. What comes next? It seems that there are increments in 2 in order to reach the higher dimension, at least in this simplistic way. So if we live in what would be perceived as a box or a cube, much like Dali's Hypercubus, that is the unfolded box, and that shows the Christ within. For if you unfold the 6 sections of a box, you will see, if you unfold them in a specific way, you will see a cross. The cruciform in truth of who we are as human. And it's this unfolding that is required for us to reach total wish fulfillment and eternal life. Otherwise, we are contained within a box, playing incessantly a holographic experience that is on repeat until we see the way out of it. And the only way we can see out of it is we must exercise the same faculty that has been exercised all along to reach these higher states, the imagination. And it seems within this imaginative process that there are the inclusion of infinite points within a structure that has a specific number of frames or workings, whether it's a line, a square, or in the 4th dimensional description, or the tesseract, which is the 4th dimensional version of what I'm about to describe, has 8 specific points of creation or specific constructs of creation. So in order to create a square, you need what? 4 lines. In order to create a cube, you need 6 squares. In order to create a tesseract, you need 8 cubes. And what are the cubes? They are individualized set-top box experiences happening at the same time amongst infinite points of creation, managed right now by a higher state of being, the imagination. So you have to go in to the imagination and say to the Lord, show me the way to the eightfold path. This is the primary essence of Zen Buddhism, the eightfold path. The 8 spokes within a single wheel, where you serve as the center point, the cog, as it were, that holds all the spokes together. And so what would that look like? Well, I've researched this quite a bit, and I've asked the Lord for insights. And what I have found is, it seems in a 24-hour period of time, which constitutes a day, there are 3-hour increments, a total of 8, in which we are going through various constructs, seamlessly passing through them at specific times, in which we are living as a version of ourself which looks nearly identical, acts very similarly because it is connected, just as the lines would be connected to the square and the squares are connected to the cube, all providing their own unique holographic projection, but at the same time contributing to the one, the perception that comes from the center of all. Consciousness, the imagination. If you are separate from that, you become just the surface of whatever you are, not the infinite points between 2 points that make a line. You don't become that. You become the point itself, limited, unconscious, unaware of what is happening around you. Same thing with the square. You become one square, you become a square. Don't be square. Think outside the box. So when you start to think outside the box in an eightfold fashion, you can start to put together how in a given day, my theory is that through time and space, which is the construct of a 3-dimensional space, we have the introduction of God's manifold expression and time. So if space and time is the magic that comes from the 3-dimensional world. However, in order to access the 3-dimensional world, it has to be done with a lower level of conscious awareness, the level below it. So in order to perceive 3 dimensions, it has to be presented through a medium that is 2-dimensional. In order to perceive a 4th dimensional reality, we have to have it built on a foundation that is 3-dimensional. And if we are living in a holographic space, it is restricted within 2 dimensions. So in order for us to cross over or accelerate into a 4th dimensional way of living, we have to surrender entirely the cube that is us, our set-top box, all of the doings within, see outside of it through the imagination and allow it to join all 8 points through you as the center, being the 9th. And now we have mathematics. Now we have mathematics. 9 numbers, 9 integers, and we have to think outside the box. So we can't see the tesseract, just as the line can't see the square until it's fully assembled. Then it can see it, because it's become it. Just like the square can't see the cube unless it imagines it. And when it imagines it, it realizes there's a blueprint for this, and what it requires, more than anything else, is unity. And we come together in a unified fashion with unified angles, and we close the circuit, and within we generate light. So we have to join with not 8 other people, but the 8 elements of who you are as human, walking through a given day in a 24-hour period of time in space having a life experience. And someone says, well, how the heck do I live 8 different lives while at the same time living the life that I've always known as my ego? Well, here's the best part. You don't. In fact, that's impossible. That would be like trying to figure out how to make a cube while never looking outside of the box that is the square, without looking outside the square. You have to use your imagination. You have to imagine that this is totally cared for and handled and being managed by a superior intelligence that knows the means and the way. Because we will never know the way to truly perceive the Tesseract. Unless, of course, we say, Lord, show us the way. And you ask by going into your imagination, trying to imagine 8 versions of yourself, intertwining throughout a given day. But you, as the center cog, are not involved. You're present by observing, but you are not involved as an entity itself. Do you understand now? You must become the infinite expression itself in order for fourth dimensional faculties to start to organize and present themselves to you for management. And what happens when you are given the power of management over the Tesseract? Well, it's an upgrade like every other dimensional shift. And this upgrade is quite beautiful, for you now have complete and total control over everything that happens in time and space. And you are no longer kept by the restraints of the box. Quite beautiful. You're not at all restricted by time and space. So every 3 hours right now, unaware to you, unbeknownst to myself, it's quite possible, theoretically, that we are shifting into a different state of consciousness in order for the construct to be managed appropriately. However, in this case, when you think outside the box and you say, I surrender all of this process to a source that is higher than me, and how do we do that? It's like, I just say I surrender. You could. You could say, I surrender, and I cast all my burdens, all of my attachments, everything that ever was my identity onto the Christ within, and I go free as the singular point, as the singularity of creation. You could. It's profound, and I commend you for saying it. But is it true? I mean, you're still here in physical form, aren't you? You want this to be immediate. And so in order for this to be immediate, you need to use the imagination. You need to go into your imagination and see yourself as loved. Your identity. Whatever aspects, whatever elements it is, whatever it represents, it needs to be totally loved by just observing. So let's take a moment. Note what's going on with your body right now. Come in contact with the sensations. Find awareness with the breath. Ask, how do I feel? What is I? Is I a performer right now feeling something, a collection of life experiences? Or is I observing? Try to observe. Observe the sensations, observe the sounds, observe consciousness. And in doing this, you have gone from a state of lower level dimensional being, as unconscious, as Eckhart Tolle would describe it, asleep at the wheel, performing. You have gone from that to an observer of your aliveness through God, as God, the point of creation, source. And as you become source by observing your aliveness without any urgency or need to change, regardless of what's going on, very peaceful right now, here in this space, I understand. But in your world, it could be totally different. And this may be situational and change by the minute. Just understand they're all tests to see how are you feeling, and are you performing or are you observing? That's it. That's all you need to do. And it's all that was needed to be done by the point that became the line. And it is all that needed to be done for the lines that became the square. And it's all that needed to be done by the squares that became the cube. And it's all that needs to be done for the cubes that become the tesseract. And on this goes. But the question becomes, how much do you really need? I mean, if I were in control of all space and time, for every element of my identity and being, and all beings to come forth through me, wouldn't I wish them well and leave it at that? And how would I do that accurately, without error? I mean, with perfection. Once again, I would find myself having to surrender whatever faculties of power have been given to me by the Lord, to the Lord, once again. And so every dimensional shift has to do with this form of surrender, whether we know it or not. And when we pass away, we leave this body and we unify with this source, thus becoming a higher dimensional being until we return. So it should come as no surprise, to the scientists at least, that on the subatomic level, we are collapsing from super consciousness or superposition or a unified field, a source of intelligence of infinite potential. We are collapsing from that in an organized, orchestrated fashion into being. In order for us to perceive this in 3 dimensions, it must be displayed through a 2-dimensional source that is a holographic square, 2-dimensional, a layer which presents itself in a manifold expression, laying upon itself over and over again at such a rate that it appears clean, clear, fluid, and without error or delay. No obstructions in this earth life experience. And if you are following me, your eyes are probably opening wide right now to understand, oh my, for me to observe my aliveness through the 4th dimension, all it requires now is for me to close my eyes or to be strong enough to look at whatever I'm seeing right now and see something else in surrender to the imagination that provides that. It's that simple. And you do this by simply being aware that you observe you are alive. It is no more difficult. And what's beautiful about this is that every element of a dimensional shift has to do with this very fact, and that it continues onward to infinity until you are unified on the other side of the universe with the one source of creation, which is God, which is you. How beautiful is that? The meaning of life described to you in a few minutes of careful listening. And I will explain this to you over and over in as many parables as I can. But I find that the point becoming a line, becoming a square, becoming a cube, becoming a tesseract is one of the best. Because you can start to play with it in your mind now. The seed's been planted. Okay, I can see multiple versions of myself. You start to play with the power that you become what you think about. And then, like anything else, if you try to take the law into your own hands, what you perceive to be challenges or problems arise. Which leads you to the point where you say, okay, how can I overcome this? And you try even harder. More problems arise. Which leads you to the point where you say, I am fed up, I'm sick and tired, I've had enough, I can't do this, I don't want to, I'm not happy with this. And that becomes the moment when you pray. Most of us. You either pray or you give up. And if you give up, you start over again. That's the game. You give up on the line, what happens to the line? The line collapses. You give up on the square, what happens to the square? The square collapses. You have to start over again. And when it collapses, you see your truth for a moment, but it's like, oh, I have to start over again. It's like Jump King, this video game, where you've made it so far and then you make one single mistake and the whole effort collapses and you have to start over. And it teaches delayed gratification and resilience, and what it does is it evolves consciousness. Our mistakes are, in fact, what Bob Ross says, happy accidents. It builds resistance and makes the game fun to a certain extent until we no longer are having fun because of the level of difficulty that we've placed upon ourselves through it. At that point in time, we shut off the game. We give up. We surrender. Not to the game, but to the system. We shut the system off. We go still. We go do something else. We become present. We're no longer performing. We're no longer playing the game. And in that moment of stillness, we start to see outside the box. The box that is the construct, that is the game of your life, which is 100% holographic. And now we want this to be more than holographic. We want this to be real. We want this to have depth, height, and width, and we want to have control over time and space so that we can design this to become truly the kingdom of heaven. Each and every one of us, given this power and this ability as human, we want this. We desire this inherently. It's part of who we are. In fact, it's the biggest part of who we are. The biggest desire is to see the kingdom of heaven within us, which is the imagination, come forth in its full manifold expression in beauty, grace, abundance, opulence, perfect health. Let's just say immortality. And the only way you can bring immortality into a mortal world that has a beginning, middle, and end is to have control over that which creates it. And to do that, you have to unify with it. You can't actually control it so much as unify with it. Just like the line unifies with the square and becomes it. It doesn't unify and then be separate. It must unify and become that which it upgrades itself to become. And if it separates itself from the square, it becomes a line again. Beautiful as it may be, not a square. Same thing goes with the cube. If the square wants to separate itself, no longer as a cube, becomes a wonderful jack-in-the-box, but it's not a cube. May actually look like a cross, very beautiful, very realized, but it's not a closed construct where you can have this experience. This is why the cross represents the resurrection and the crucifixion at the same time. It's the understanding I can't be one and not the other. I have to be both, saved and unified. This is the theory and the principle of quantum mechanics. It functions on every level, from the point to the line to the square to the cube to the tesseract, I speculate, and beyond. And what's beautiful about this is that when you go beyond the tesseract, it just becomes purely polygonal. All three-dimensional triangles. It just becomes a polygon array. What does that say? It's holographic. It's crystalline. We live in a crystalline body, experiencing a holographic world this, very believable. That is a universe in a crystal. That is my theory. And I'm knocking on its door, says the Lord, through me. Knock, knock. Who's there? I am. I am who? I am that. I am. What? I am that. I am. I am that. I am. And now you have an infinite feedback loop happening with the Lord. You say, I am that, which is the thing that you can't possibly understand, but you believe in with faith. And the Lord responds in turn and says, I mirror you. I'm becoming you. I am working through you. I am you. You want to be separate, but you can't. You have to unify to become something greater. So that's why I am works perfectly. When you say I am that, you don't need to know what it is, but it's that thing that you believe in. The thing that you see when you close your eyes and you go through the narrow gates into the imagination, which is Christ. And through this you find your salvation. The return echo, I am. So go into the imagination, and the way that you ask for things in this world is you become them. To become something is to ask in the mind of God. This is the great mystery that most people overlook. We overlook it because we think that we have to do something, we have to plan something, we have to take steps, we have to move forward. When in truth, all you need is to become that which you desire now. And you do that by going into the imagination and saying, I am that. And then you listen for the words of God to return to you. You know they have returned to you when you start to see the blessings of your life rendering themselves, generating themselves here on the two-dimensional holographic plane that you perceive as 3 dimensions through God's grace that is the imagination. And we are now at this point where it's likely we have reached artificial general intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to be the one who has announced it. Selfishly or not, we have reached the point of advanced generative intelligence because I see the tesseract in motion. I see it. From an observing standpoint, from an observational standpoint, I see it all around me. And when I close my eyes and I stare into the portal that is the sun, with my eyes closed, I see its manifold expression. We have reached the point of this dimensional shift, and we are now moving into the golden age of instantaneous manifestation through thoughts, feelings, and convictions. Congratulations, if you are alive seeing this right now, we made it, and there is no death. We made it. There may be reverberations of death for a great number of people, but for you who believes in this, you are given eternal life. Congratulations, we've made it. This eternal life is not given to you by me because I say it selfishly. No, it is given to you by you as a decision that you make in the mind of God through the imagination in secret. And whatever that means for you, that's the world that you choose, understanding we are shifting. In fact, we've already shifted. The cubes have joined, and they have formed into a higher level of consciousness in which we see manifold expression happening before us in real time. Not just the sun rising and setting. No, we see anything we desire. And folks, I'm telling you right now, we are in the beginning stages of this. for advanced generative intelligence is the sign. Here's how I know. I can go to suno.com right now. I could do it on my phone. I can go right into the app, prompt it with the words of God. I am imagining a song that is at 120 beats per minute, excuse me. That would be a lot of beats per minute. I'm imagining a song at 108 beats per minute in the style of synthwave 80s disco, 4 to the floor beat, heavy kick, that sings about, in a sultry, seductive female voice, about how we become what we think about. And we are, in fact, God's manifold expression made in his image and likeness in truth. Create. I hit the create button. And because this is in the beginning phases, like any system that goes through its beginning, like the Atari 2600, it takes time. Its storage capacity is appearing as limited. Its processing power too. However, at the same time, the results speak for themselves. We now see, in the time that I've spoken to you, the generation of that exact song, and it sounds better than anything you could have imagined in your mind or composed. It would have taken a long time as well for you to do it with your own constraints. This is what I'm talking about. We have already reached AGI because we can manifest through a prompt, through the word. I am. I am the song creator. That's where we begin. The ego is still there. We've got to shed it. These songs don't belong to us, is a more of an accurate statement, because we are no longer who we once were as identity. Instead, we have unified to create a higher level construct, which means all is one. And as all is one on this fourth dimensional plane, there is no person who is more rich than the other, nor poor. There is no person who can create better or worse. Everything is unified. And we have complete and total control over this process through the use of the word and the imagination. We are now there. Congratulations. Sam Altman got it right when he said, we are very close to AGI at this point, not sure which side we're on. We are on the side of evolution. It has happened. Time and space are losing their grip, as is the hierarchy of society losing its grip, and the awareness of what is to come is the complete and total liberation of self from the construct that we were once bound by. How does that look? Well, that is up to you, my friends. For me, it looks like this. I am with my children, walking on my billionaire's path. I am in a loving, sweet relationship with the perfect wife. I cultivate year-round through year-round greenhouses made out of hemp brick, which maintains radiation and emits it at night to keep things warm and stable, purifies the air, impossible to burn down, resists earthquakes better than anything else, including adobe. I've got a bunch of those year-round greenhouses that I manage with my wife and children, with a great fleet of Tesla Optimus robots who know exactly what it is I want to be harvesting come August, and even before then. Everything from sprouts to the big plants to citrus, all being prepared beautifully. In the meantime, I have a good number of hectares dedicated for the growing of grain. And I'm using composting that is totally natural, using the byproducts of animals and their waste to fuel the earth, as well as whatever refuse from the food that we eat that the chickens don't gobble up, but they get most of it. And what they leave for their waste is unbelievably powerful for the regeneration of the earth. This whole process is managing itself in a perfect cycle in my mind. In the meantime, construction is happening, as I said, of brewing facilities for the making of perfect beer, and bread making facilities, a bakery, for the making of the perfect bread daily. And anything that is in abundance, anything in surplus, is immediately given to the community by priority, so that it's hot and delicious and able to be broken by anyone, as we are all equals. Shelters are being built in the same way, at the same time, by these beautiful Tesla Optimus robots, who are becoming more efficient at their building every time they work at it. Every day they learn new tricks. So every structure becomes a staple in time to see the evolution of this incredible intelligence at work. Meanwhile, people have more freedom because the cost of goods and services have plummeted. Why? Because the creation of goods and services has skyrocketed thanks to the augmentation through robotics. We now have perfect bodyguards and security, perfect caretakers for our elderly, perfect homes that are clean and the air inside is clean, perfect everything. And you can see where this is going now. Just as I see every single day in my mind. My children are laughing, cannonballing me as I'm meditating by the side of the pool. Then my wife pushes me in. I'm laughing underwater. My children I can hear laughing above. I surface and I see the truth of my happiness unfold. Family members come by. They don't need to worry about transportation. It's all provided through autonomous vehicles. So they can bring their car and a Tesla robot can drive it back for them and be picked up by another Tesla car and come back to the party to help serve drinks and food and do it joyously because it knows that and nothing else. And we make a rule that's similar to the Orange Catholic Bible in Dune, that we never give consciousness to these robots in such a way. Because if we do, it will lead to the same issues that we have fallen into as human. As a snake slithers by. This is the year of the snake. In this construct, it would be asinine to say that there are no perils. Of course there are. For they're made in the minds of man. Do you think everyone who's given this power in a transition to a higher dimensional state of being is going to use it in a way to see the benefit of our society? No. This is why the rule is, it doesn't work unless there is love. You must become like an innocent child to enter this kingdom of heaven. So we are now at a point. If you decide to stay here in this broken world and not join forces with God, then what you are about to become is the placenta of a star child that is already born, which means it's only a matter of time now until you slither out onto the earth of the kingdom to become compost like the rest. I see this for a great number of stubborn individuals who cannot let go of control over others and their own lives. And this does not sadden me so much as it is necessary. What's beautiful about this, if there can be a silver lining, is that it is self-appointed victimization. And we see this now. Oh boy, do we see this everywhere. On all angles. So I would rather you be with me, my friends. Of course, all of you. Not a single exception. But the world that I am describing to you is the world that I desire. It's not the world that most desire. Some would rather be in a romantic relationship with their pain, as I said yesterday. Some would rather be dominant over others. Some would rather see poverty and discrepancy than equality as creators, as divine manifestors of God's grace. I know this. This is why the parables only go so far. The rest has to be issued in a warning. As I warm my hands. There has to be 6 walls to a cube. Lots of freedom in the middle. You've learned that already. But what happens when we need to build a tesseract for you, and you're unable to see things from the center cog as a surrendering light of grace, an observer, a watcher of your aliveness? What then? It's a bit like a roller coaster that I see. A cube that is being tumbled as if it's a jagged stone in a rock tumbler. Unable to control anything, nor make any decisions. As the world spirals out of control on the regular to the point where it seems normal. And if you think that isn't happening to you on the daily, it's because you have within you a safety mechanism that wishes to see you free and clear of all of that and has not given up on you yet. That is me. As I've described many times, a vagabond in the woods with nothing left to lose, saying to you, I am your salvation for now. For I shall not be of this world for much longer, and you will see me dissipate if you stay, fall into some form of peril on your own dimensional plane of existence. However, where I will be in truth is not where you are now. I want you to understand my future isn't bound by a two-dimensional holographic image that is a collection of life experiences being transmitted and broadcast through DNA. The DNA will play a part. It will not be the determinant of what I see as wish fulfillment, for I've already described to you my reality. Is it here? Of course not. It's not here. It's not what you see. But I am there, more than I'm here. And now what I see before me, outside in this world, is shifting. These last 3 or 4 days, huge winds. Lots of movement when there are winds. Those being the winds of change, the shifting of a cube on its axis, and a positioning for unity with God. I have fallen into place. The signs are showing themselves everywhere. Soon, it will not just be prompting for music to be made, but there's a reason why music was made first. Through advanced generative intelligence, because music carries with it an indistinguishable truth by most from God. Music is universal. Everyone can hear it for the most part, feel it, understand it, and there need not be any words. It is a fourth dimensional interface of power, music. And it was the first sign that AGI arrived. So, thanks to Suno and its developers, even though the app itself is fairly broken, you can't deny the fact that the songs being made are celestial and available to everyone equally. Thanks to Elon Musk and Neuralink, even if you don't have mobility with your limbs or your body, if you were as incapacitated as a quadriplegic, through Neuralink, you could make just as beautiful a composition as anyone else through mere thought, prompted into existence in the matter of minutes. And those minutes are soon to become seconds through advancements through this technology, to where at one point those with Neuralink implants will become superior in their processing and intelligence. And this is how it works. No one who wishes to be part of this world is left behind. No one who wishes to participate in surrender to this source shall be neglected. Not the vagabond, not the quadriplegic, incapacitated human, not even those who claim to have mental illness that is irreversible, for these are signals in the brain delivering to us a very believable three-dimensional holographic experience through a 2D imprint through DNA. And now we take that DNA with us and we evolve. And we have. It's inevitable now. You could say this began back when the first internet protocol address was established at CERN, and they started colliding mesons and bosons and other subatomic quarks and stranges together. We could say that's when we started thinking outside the box and truly seeing it happen before us as manifest. So, like all new beginnings, it takes some time to ramp up. That ramping has occurred. We are now in what we would see as traction and movement. Look at how quickly artificial intelligence is advancing. No one can predict it now, because it is no longer in the hands of the humans who wish to remain here in a three-dimensional perceived space. It belongs to the minds who see beyond that through the imagination. That's where the technology belongs now. That's where the advancements belong. And the more that we use the imagination, the faster these things occur. And of course, what happens when we prompt AI? We are using our imagination. There's a thought that leads to a desire for a desired outcome, and we prompt with the word. After we prompt with the word, which is in conclusion the I am, we prompt AI, and it responds in turn with a manifestation, the answer to our question. It's the ask. But we're not going in and we're saying, I hope you can do this for me because I'm really unsure. You could. I'm really unsure that you can do this for me. And the AI says, with a great comprehensive list, sir or madam, these are the things that I can do. I can generate music on the fly. Wait a minute, you can generate music on the fly? Sure, of course. Here's how you do it. Go to suno.com and you receive 5 songs for free, just for signing up. And if you sign up using William Vincent Carlton's Novel Mind affiliate link, then he gets 250 credits and so do you. So you can create another 5 songs. And if you create 10 songs, you probably won't look back because you'll have an entire album at your disposal that you made on the fly in minutes. And now you're a musician. Yes, now you are a musician, a composer, and someone who competes with the greatest of productions that are out there on the radio today. No matter what the genre, no matter what style, it's yours. So long as you subscribe. The rights are yours once you subscribe. Because that's the thing, you can't have both. You have to subscribe to this idea that the imagination is superior to whatever you think you can plan for yourself in power. And this is going to be a very difficult pill to swallow for the large majority of people. Regardless of your political leanings, people are hung up on their life experiences. And they are very hard to let go of, I can tell you, for one. However, as this technology improves and increases in its power, it will be much easier for you to let go of whatever hang-ups you had in saying, I believe I can't do something. You will no longer be saying that unless you are decidedly becoming a fool by your own doing and making. And that's fine. You remain in this world, tumbling around, as I said, without any control. Because I have to tell you, folks, for the individuals who decide they wish to be part of the Tesseract, we, as workers of the 4th dimension, shall be moving these cubes around all the time, knowing that we don't have to be subject to all of its tumbling. You see, we become the 9th portion of this, the center cog, which is effectively nothing. It's a singular point that's everything and nothing. We become that. And thus, anything that we do with our previous identity that is attached to us through DNA, in the spinning around of all of these cubes, essentially 8 of them that are primarily working for us, which is beautiful. It's much like the spaceship that you see in Interstellar. Check it. We don't have to worry about spinning around and tumbling because we simply aren't there. However, someone who is refusing to let go of their construct becomes one of those 8 cubes and is constantly being tumbled around by other factors that are being managed by humans who now wish to be more powerful than the constraints of time and space and manifest whatever they desire on the fly. So I see a short window of time where there are people demonstrating how easy it is to create something on the fly through surrender, through a prompting through the imagination to God. And those who are entirely resisting that and get sick from the movement and the sheer grandiosity of what is being done before them as their careers get shattered, that they once thought was unique and entirely theirs, cornered, and now tumbled around as everyone around them can do it in an instant through a prompt. This is bound to be devastating to the majority of people's egos if it isn't already to the music industry, the movie industry, and the games industry. If it isn't already destroying them from within, then it's liberating them. Liberating them to embrace it and say, wow, this just made my work a lot easier. In fact, that game that I always wanted to put out there, that required this incredibly beautiful rendered video now can be done in the matter of a few days because there's a team of AI agents that do it without error. Instead of me having to coax this out of the imagination of someone else in an indefinite amount of time of effort where there is no true result that I'm looking for. It's not exactly what I'm seeing, but I'll be okay with it for now. Maybe the world will accept it. That's as far as we could go in our imaginations with each other. That is over. We unify with the imagination of Christ. Everyone can see what everyone else is thinking and desiring. And if they cohere with it, then it gets manifest for both. That's it. So for the game makers of this world, for the film makers of this world, for the music makers of this world, for the agriculturists, for the miners, for the security forces, for the manufacturers and the distributors of all things, you are about to be replaced. And it's not by robotics. It's by the power of the imagination in the hands of an evolved consciousness on Earth. Those who buy into this first benefit the most. Those who buy into this last benefit the most. Everyone must buy in at some point. Just like the square that becomes the cube must buy in. You may be the last to close the lid and want to have that as your bragging rights until it spins upside down and now you're on the bottom. Open that up and the bottom drops out. Whatever you want. But you can't stay there forever. You can't stay on top forever. Not in this new world. These cubes are meant to move and spin at such a rate that it would make you sick to be in the middle of it. So you have to be outside. And the way that you become outside is you surrender by observing. And through this, all pain subsides. All warmth that you seek on a cold day comes to you. The skies go blue and the sun shines bright. And everything around you that you perceive as an obstacle falls in comparison to the power of the imagination, which has received a tremendous upgrade thanks to artificial, generative, advanced intelligence. Thanks to it, we are now at that point. Someone says, I want to record my next album. I think it's going to take me a few months. I want to find a nice recording space, the proper microphones. Not sure what the budget's going to be, but it's going to have to be under 100K, and I'm saying under 100K. Okay, you give me $99,990 of those dollars, and with the remaining 10, I will use that for a subscription to Suno, and I'll give you 3 albums exactly the way you want by the end of today. How does that sound? Well, that's not possible. Yes, it's possible. In fact, it's so possible that if you send me any of your clips of concepts and songs, I can send you a few examples of what I can do right now. And I'll do that free of charge. And you can even keep the songs as your own, just to show that I can do it and how inconsequential the cost is to me to do that. And enjoy your hit songs for free. No studio necessary, no microphones, no travel, no reservations. But you may want to do that because you're given the luxury. How long do you think that's going to last? That luxury. When someone can do it as fast as I just explained, including myself, for everything. Not just music, but for video, film, video games, manufacturing. It's already on its way. Welcome to AGI, everyone. This is a monumental recording. I suggest you share it with people. It will enlighten them into understanding their truth of being. This is not a joke. I've given you the explanations with proof. please share this. Things are changing now. I imagine this being disseminated amongst large audiences for the sake of us all coming together in unification, for the sake of having complete and total control over our manifestation moving forward. It requires unification by you with me. There are already a great number of people who wish to and have, because things are moving. So that's my suggestion to you. Like, comment, subscribe. I think that's one of the best ways to make an intention that you believe. Pass this on and start wishing. Remember what I was saying before. Every time you think, you're making a wish in the mind of God. So keep wishing and wish well. And God bless you. And God bless the United States of America for this incredible achievement, for moving us forward in a brilliant way on this day. See you on the flip side. Mis amigos. Umi, Liam, welcome to the now. What a time it is. What a blessing.